As the fiery sunset melted into the horizon, streaks of crimson and gold bathed the Seattle skyline in a warm, glowing farewell to the day. I leaned against the airplane window, feeling the exhaustion of my 4-month global tour settle into my bones. From the grand theatres of London to the bustling conference halls of Singapore, I had spent weeks speaking to strangers about resilience, hope, and chasing dreams. My voice had echoed across continents, inspiring thousands, yet at that moment, as the plane touched down, all I longed for was something far simpler. I just wanted to go home, home. That word held more comfort than any 5-star hotel or standing ovation ever could. I pictured my father, Harold Thompson, in his favorite armchair, the evening light glinting off his reading glasses as he lost himself in a mystery novel. I could almost hear my mother, Clara, humming softly in the kitchen, the scent of her apple pie filling every corner of the house. That was home, warmth, laughter, and love. Before I'd left, I had surprised them with a gift I thought would change everything, a luxurious penthouse at Harbour Tower, overlooking the glittering waters of Elliott Bay. I wanted to give them the life they deserved after years of sacrifice. It was my way of saying thank you for every sleepless night they spent ensuring Dylan, my younger brother, and I had enough to eat and a roof over our heads. As I drove from the airport that evening, the city lights shimmered like scattered jewels. I rolled down the car window, breathing in the cool salt air. The world outside buzzed with life, neon signs flickered, and people hurried along the sidewalks, unaware of the storm of emotions brewing inside me. My heart pounded with excitement. I couldn't wait to see the look on my parents' faces when I walked through that door. The Harbour Tower stood tall and elegant, its glass facade reflecting the last golden hues of dusk. My footsteps echoed in the marble-floored lobby as I greeted the doorman, who gave me a polite smile. "Welcome back, Mr. Thompson. It's been a while." I nodded, my mind already racing ahead. Inside the elevator, I watched the numbers climb, 20, 30, 40, 45. My heart raced faster with each floor. When the doors finally slid open, the familiar hallway stretched before me, softly lit and carpeted in deep blue. I paused for a moment outside the door, a smile tugging at my lips. I could almost hear my mother's voice, "Alex, you work too much. Come eat before the pie gets cold." I knocked 3 times, but the person who opened the door wasn't my mother, Dylan. I blinked, caught off guard. My younger brother stood there in a faded hoodie, his hair disheveled, eyes half open like he'd been asleep. Behind him, I caught sight of Sophia, his wife, sitting at the counter with a bowl of cereal in her hands. She looked up, her expression unreadable. "Hey, Alex," Dylan said casually, leaning against the doorframe. "You're back early." For a moment, I couldn't speak. "Where are Mom and Dad?" He shrugged, that same careless shrug he used to give whenever he broke something as a kid. "They didn't like it here. Too busy, too modern. They went back to Tacoma." My heart stuttered. "What do you mean they went back? This place was for them." Sophia's voice drifted in, smooth but sharp at the edges. "They said it was too noisy. They preferred their old neighborhood. You know how older people are, they get overwhelmed." Something in her tone made my stomach twist. I stepped inside, scanning the apartment. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, spotless, elegant, untouched. But it didn't feel lived in. There were no books on the table, no kitchen towels folded near the sink, no scent of pie cooling on the counter. It was perfect, too perfect. "When did they leave?" I asked quietly. "A couple weeks after you flew out," Dylan said, avoiding my eyes. "They didn't say much. Just packed and left." I gripped the handle of my suitcase tighter, trying to steady my voice. "And you two just stayed here?" He gave a casual laugh. "Well, someone had to take care of the place." My chest tightened. Memories flashed in my mind, my father working overtime to pay Dylan's tuition, my mother cooking extra meals when he lost his job, both of them forgiving him time after time. And now, he stood here, claiming their home like it was his own. I could feel anger rising like fire beneath my skin. But instead of shouting, I forced myself to stay calm. I see, I said, stepping back toward the door. Enjoy the view while you can. The words hung in the air as I left. Driving through the rain toward Tacoma, my mind raced with questions. My parents wouldn't have just left without telling me. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. The city lights faded behind me, replaced by dark forests and winding roads. The rhythmic hum of the tires was broken only by the soft patter of rain. When I finally pulled up to our old bungalow, my breath caught in my throat. The house stood silent, its porch light off, the windows dark. I knocked, calling out their names, but there was no answer. The air smelled of damp wood and neglect. Panic clawed at my chest. I turned and hurried to the neighbor's house, Mrs. Ellis, who had lived next door since I was a child. She opened the door, and her eyes widened in surprise. Alex. Oh, dear, you're finally here. Where are my parents? I demanded, my voice trembling. Her expression softened. Your father's in the hospital, sweetheart. St. Mary's. He's been very sick. Your mother's with him. The words hit me like a blow. I didn't even say goodbye. I just ran. When I reached the hospital, I found my mother sitting beside a bed, her hand clutching my father's. He looked frail, his once strong hands resting limply on the sheets, tubes and monitors surrounding him. Mom, my voice broke. What happened? She turned to me, eyes red from crying. It was the cold, Alex. He caught a fever when we left Seattle. It got worse. The doctor says it's his heart. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered. She tried to smile, but tears spilled down her cheeks. We didn't want to worry you. You were traveling the world, doing so much good, but I could see the pain in her eyes, and the truth beneath it. As she spoke, the story came out in fragments. The tension after I left, Dylan's sharp words, Sophia's cold disdain. The arguments. The pressure. Until one night, they told my parents they were a burden. My parents packed what little they could and left, walking out of that luxury tower in the pouring rain. I felt my knees weaken. They threw you out. My mother lowered her head. We just wanted peace. Anger surged through me, hot, consuming, relentless. I looked at my father's pale face and felt the weight of guilt crash down. I had built a dream home for them, only for it to become a place of humiliation and pain. I took my mother's trembling hand. I promise you, I said, voice low but steady, I'll make this right. Whatever it takes. She nodded, tears glistening. And as I stood there, watching the monitors beep softly in the dim hospital light, one thing became clear: this was no longer about property or pride. It was about dignity. About love. About family, and I swore to myself, the betrayal would not be the final chapter of our story. The drive back to Seattle the next morning felt different. The same highway I had traveled the night before now seemed heavier, burdened by anger and guilt. The city's skyline, once a symbol of success, looked distant and cold through the misty rain. My father's frail image from the hospital lingered in my mind, every heartbeat reminding me of the pain my absence had caused. I had spent years motivating others to chase purpose, yet I had somehow lost sight of my own, my family. By the time I reached downtown, dawn was breaking. I parked near the waterfront, staring at the rippling bay for a long moment before pulling out my phone. It was time to act, not out of rage, but out of justice. I contacted Elena Vargas, a lawyer I'd met at a leadership seminar years ago. She was sharp, professional, and had a way of seeing beyond the surface of things. When I explained everything, the penthouse, my parents' eviction, and Dylan's betrayal, she listened quietly, her expression unreadable. Finally, she leaned forward. You have every right to be angry, Alex, she said softly. But anger alone won't fix this. Legally, your brother was invited. That means he can't simply be thrown out without due process. So you're saying they get to stay? I asked, disbelief hardening my tone. For now, she said. But if your father grants you power of attorney, you can reclaim control. Until then, we need patience and strategy. Patience. The word tasted bitter. But I nodded. I had preached patience to thousands. Now it was my turn to live it. When I returned to the penthouse later that day, the air inside was tense the moment I opened the door. Dylan looked up from the couch, startled. What are you doing here? He demanded. I live here, I said calmly, dropping my keys on the counter. Half of this place is mine, legally. Sophia crossed her arms, her voice cold. You can't just walk in like that. We have our privacy. I met her gaze evenly. Then maybe you should have thought of that before throwing our parents out. Her expression faltered, just for a moment. Then she turned away. Over the next few weeks, I stayed. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply existed, a quiet storm in their perfect world. Early each morning, I'd wake before dawn, open the curtains, and let the sunlight flood in. I filled the space with soft jazz as I worked on my laptop, my motivational talks echoing through the speakers as I rehearsed for upcoming events. Maintenance workers came for routine inspections, deliveries arrived under my name, and the penthouse slowly shifted back to its rightful owner, me. 81st. Dylan tried to ignore it, but tension built like a crack in glass. I caught whispers at night, arguments behind closed doors. He's doing this to push us out. Sophia hissed one evening. We can't live like this. But I stayed silent. The best revenge wasn't shouting, it was reclaiming peace on my own terms. Meanwhile, my focus remained on Tacoma. Every day, I called my mother. She'd update me on my father's recovery, her voice brighter with each conversation. He's walking again, she said one morning. He even fixed the toaster yesterday. That small piece of news lifted a weight from my chest. My father, the man who had taught me that anything broken can be mended, was healing, slowly, but surely. A few weeks later, he signed the power of attorney. Elena moved swiftly. Within days, formal eviction papers were issued to Dylan and Sophia. The law, once an obstacle, had now become my ally. When the deadline came, they left quietly, no confrontation, no goodbyes. The sound of the door closing behind them felt like the end of a long, painful chapter. I stood in the living room for a long time afterward, staring at the skyline through the wide windows. The penthouse gleamed, but it felt empty. Hollow. All that luxury meant nothing anymore. I sold it. Every cent went into a project that had been brewing in my mind since my father's hospital stay, a community center in Tacoma. Not a grand building for the wealthy, but a haven for families like ours, hard-working people who needed a place to gather, learn, and rebuild their lives. The following months were a whirlwind of blueprints, permits, and late-night planning sessions. I threw myself into the work completely. The center would have classrooms, a small library, a cafe, and even a garden where children could plant their own vegetables. My parents visited often, lending their support in ways that warmed my heart. My mother baked pies for the construction crew. My father, still recovering, offered his advice on fixing leaky pipes and broken lights. The day the foundation was laid, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: peace. Real peace. One evening, as we sat together at the construction site, watching the sun dip behind the trees, my father spoke quietly. You know, son, forgiveness is harder than revenge, he said. But it heals more deeply. I nodded, watching the colors of the sky fade into amber. I'm trying, Dad. I really am. I know, he said, smiling faintly. And that's enough. By the time the Evergreen Community Center opened 6 months later, Tacoma buzzed with excitement. The entire neighborhood came to celebrate. The walls were painted in cheerful tones, and laughter echoed through the hallways. Children ran through the garden, while local artists set up paintings along the corridor. We chose to hold the grand opening on my father's 66th birthday. It felt fitting, a new beginning born from old pain. When I took the stage to speak, I looked at the faces before me, friends, neighbors, families, and felt my voice tremble. This place, I began, isn't just a building. It's a reminder that even when life breaks us, we can rebuild. My parents taught me that lesson. They taught me that success isn't measured by money or applause, it's measured by the love we give and the lives we lift. Applause filled the room, but what touched me most was the sight of my parents in the front row, holding hands, smiling through tears. My father raised his thumb in quiet approval, and my mother's eyes glowed with pride. Later that evening, as the crowd dispersed and the stars emerged over Tacoma, I stepped outside into the cool night air. The center's lights shimmered softly behind me, and I could hear faint laughter echoing inside, laughter that reminded me of our old home. In that moment, I realized something profound. I had spent so many years chasing success across the globe, trying to prove my worth through achievements and recognition. But true success wasn't standing on a stage before strangers. It was standing beside the people who loved me unconditionally, no matter how far I had strayed. The betrayal had hurt deeply, but it had also stripped away my illusions and brought me back to what truly mattered: family, humility, and forgiveness. I took one last look at the glowing windows of the Evergreen Center and smiled. The past couldn't be changed, but it had shaped me into someone stronger, someone who finally understood that the greatest victories aren't loud or grand. They are quiet moments of peace born from pain. That night, I drove home to Tacoma with the windows down, the cool breeze against my face, and my heart finally at rest.